First story. OP's entitled parents resent him for starting his own family. I had somewhat of a revelation this weekend. I'm still processing how I feel about it and considering if I should confront my parents. Anyway, here it is. I believe my parents resent me for starting my own family. I 40M come from a big family. I'm the second oldest of 9 kids. My older sister Jane is just a year older than me. There is a 6-year gap between me and the next sibling, and then my mom had a kid every 2 to 3 years. Since Jane and I were the oldest, we always helped with the little kids and the chores around the house. In fact, it was common for my parents and other adults to refer to us as Jane and OP and the kids. It's like Jane and I were not considered children. It's more like we were 2 other adults living in the house. We were homeschooled, so we were home all the time. Part of my job is that I would wake up, make breakfast for the kids, then get them started with their school or activities before I started my own schoolwork. Jane would sleep in because she was more of a night owl, and it was her job to help at night with the baby because there was always a baby. Jane and I did most of the chores around the house. We took turns either cleaning the kitchen or doing the laundry, of which there was a lot. I did all the guy stuff, like mowing the yard and taking out the trash. As I got older, I would delegate some of these chores to my younger brothers, but it was still my responsibility to make sure they got done. Once I was old enough to drive, I would run errands and take the kids everywhere. I can't tell you how many times I would take the kids to things like playdates or doctor's appointments. I would often tuck the kids in bed and tell them stories. To me, these things were all just normal, but looking back on it, I was more like a second dad to the kids than a brother. Jane and I did have a lot of freedom as teenagers to go out with our friends, if the chores were done. We didn't have cell phones back then. If we wanted to go out, we would just tell our parents we were going, and they didn't care as long as we were back by the next morning. I moved out when I was 20, but I still spent a lot of time with my parents, and one of my younger siblings was almost always at my house. One brother, JJ, has pretty much lived with me since he was 14 because he and our mom didn't get along. When JJ was 17, he got in a wreck, and he called me instead of calling Dad because I was just the one who handled those kinds of things. During all of this time, my parents always talked about how important it was for Jane and me to help with the kids because they were so busy with their ministry. I can't count how many times I had to drop what I was doing to take care of something because Mom or Dad were counseling someone. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. I hope I have painted an accurate picture of my childhood. Let's move on. I had not really dated much, but when I was 25, I met and started dating Anne. We fell in love fast and got married less than a year later. My younger siblings love Anne. She is a great cook and hostess. Our house became the hangout spot. My younger siblings started calling her Mama Anne, something they still do to this day. We have now been married for 15 years and have 2 kids of our own. My mom and Jane did not like Anne. Jane and Anne get along okay now, but Anne and my mom do not have a good relationship. I never understood why, but I think I have finally figured out it's because they see it as Anne having taken me away. As Anne and I focused on our relationship and started a family, I spent less and less time doing things for my parents. My dad liked Anne at first, but over the past few years, their relationship has soured. Throughout the years, my dad has made comments to me about keeping up with my responsibilities. One time he called me about one of the younger kids who had gotten into a fight with my mom and said, "You better get your brother and change his attitude. It's not okay how he treated your mom, and you are going to make him apologize." A few years ago, Anne and I set some boundaries with my parents, telling them we were not going to raise or discipline their kids. Our home is always open to my siblings, but we no longer let my parents try and use us to straighten them up. My parents have not taken this well. About a year ago, Anne injured her foot and couldn't walk for a while. Just as she was getting better, I was diagnosed with kidney disease, which then turned into kidney failure. I've had several surgeries, with another one coming in a few weeks. It's been a rough year. During this time, my parents have not only refused to help, they have actively made things harder for us. Things like promising to help with our kids, but then canceling at the last minute, usually because something ministry-related came up. Recently, my sister-in-law, who lives in another state, had a baby, and my mom has been staying with her and helping for the past 6 weeks. My sil has said that Mom is a godsend and is so wonderful. My dad has gone to help every weekend. This hurts me because my mom wouldn't give us a single night to help with our youngest when he was born. Anyway, I'm sorry this post has turned out longer than I thought it would. I needed to get some of this off my chest. This weekend I was talking to another sister and telling her how I don't understand why Mom and Dad don't treat me like they do the rest of the kids, even Jane. It's like I'm not one of their children. And it just kind of hit me that they resent me for getting married, starting my own family, and leaving them to raise their own kids. Part of me is relieved to finally realize why they treat me like they do, and part of me is sad. I'm kind of scared about this upcoming surgery, and I really wish I had a parent I could talk to about it. But I don't feel like I have parents, just some people that I co-parented my siblings with. Update. Thanks to everyone who engaged with my last post. It has been therapeutic. This post is a brief update, and then I will answer some questions. Update. I spoke with my wife Anne about it last night. I said something along the lines of, I've realized that my parents resent me for starting my own family and not helping them as much, and that is why they treat me so differently. And I think you've been trying to gently tell me this for years, but I was too dense to get it. We were sitting in the bed at the time, and she leaned over and patted me on the head and said, "You are so pretty." I laughed for like 10 minutes. It was a great emotional release. A lot of you said she sounds wonderful, and she really is. I just can't express how much I love her. About Jane, my older sister. Jane did get married and start a family, about 2 years after I did. Jane and I fell out and didn't speak for several years, but we are okay now, just not very close. Our falling out was more about religion than anything. She is very religious, like my parents, while I am not. I am religious, and we attend church, but it's not our whole life like it is for my parents and Jane. Younger siblings. The youngest is 22, so they are all adults now. The second to youngest passed away several years ago, so there are 8 of us now. I am very close with all of my younger siblings. They still come hang out at my house all the time, and they are all great aunts and uncles to my kids. All of them, including Jane, are upset with how my parents treated me this past year. Help with my kids. While I am disappointed in my parents for not helping, I do not need their help. Anne and I have close friends, plus we both have siblings that help. Anne's parents live far away, but they help when they can. We really are okay and feel very blessed and loved with all the help we have received. Therapy. Part of my kidney treatment plan includes access to a therapist, and I love her. She has been great at helping me learn to live with an illness. I'm not sure if she is the right person to speak with about my parents, but I will ask her and see if she can refer someone if not. I will wait until after my surgery to bring this up, as I need to just focus on that right now. Setting boundaries. When I say my parents won't help, it's not that they say they won't help. It's that they offer to help, and then either bail at the last minute, or they change the plans so much that it causes Anne and I a lot of stress. A few months ago, Anne was sick, and my mother offered to pick up our kids from school. It's a long story, but she kept changing things and making it very complicated, and my youngest ended up being left alone for a little while, and he got scared. After that, I had a harsh talk with my parents, and told them how disappointed I was in them, and how I needed to focus on my health, and they were making things worse. I told them they are not allowed to take my kids anywhere, and they are not allowed to just drop by at my house. In fact, they were not even allowed to offer to help, because my mom doesn't take no for an answer, and will nag until she wears me down. My parents were mad about this, but all 7 of my siblings took my side and rallied around me, and so my parents have respected that so far. Going no contact. A lot of people recommended going no contact. I don't want that. I still love my parents, even though they have not been great parents. My kids love them too, and I don't want to take that away. They are good grandparents when they show up. I don't think my parents are awful people. I think they had this vision of how they wanted to have this big family and this big ministry, and I think they just didn't realize the responsibilities they put on Jane and me. I have spoken to them in the past and expressed how it was messed up that they put so much on us as kids, and they have apologized. Putting my parents on blast at their church. Several people recommended going to their church and telling people how they have treated me. You don't understand this church. They would praise my parents for putting God and the ministry above everything else. These super religious people are crazy. I guess that's it for now. My surgery is in less than 2 weeks, so I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to put this thing with my parents on the back burner, and later I will decide what, if anything, I'm going to do. Thanks again to everyone for their comments. It has really helped me work through some feelings. Update 2. Thanks to everyone who has reached out and wished me a speedy recovery. My surgery was last week, and it is going better than expected. All the surgeries and treatments in the past year felt like they were just keeping me alive. But with this surgery, a kidney transplant, I feel like I'm working towards getting my normal life back. It's been hard and painful, but I was expecting it to be worse, so I can't complain at all. Anne is always telling me that she doesn't get enough credit for being funny, so the fact that so many of you laughed when she told me I was pretty has made her happy. She said, "I like these Reddit people. This whole post started because I was having a conversation with one of my sisters. I'll call her Six, since I can't keep making up names. Plus, she is following this thread and will hate that I am calling her that. Six had had a fight with our parents, and I was sharing with her that Anne and I had recently set strong boundaries with them and encouraged her to do the same. So she did, and they did not take it well. This led to several conversations with different siblings, and both 5 and 9 also decided to set some boundaries. This has also led to other siblings deciding to confront our parents about how they have treated me this past year while I have been sick. Jane, the oldest, called me the day before my surgery to check on me, and we ended up talking about our childhood. We have not been close for a number of years. However, I feel like we bonded on this call. It was interesting talking to her as an adult and reliving some things. She has been in therapy for a few years, and she said sometimes she will be talking, and her therapist will stop her and say, "Jane, you just casually rolled through some messed up stuff. We need to stop and unpack this." For a long time, I have blamed her for the way she treated me when we were younger. But now I am beginning to understand that she was also just a kid trying to cope. I have a lot more grace for her now. We have been texting a lot the past few weeks. My parents did come visit after the surgery, but we didn't talk about any family drama. My siblings have said they are not taking these new boundaries well at all. I hope that one day they wake up and realize that all 8 of their children are disappointed in them, and that they work to be better people, but I'm not holding my breath. It seems they are placing all the blame like they normally do. This is just an attack by the devil. And I decided that, moving forward, we were going to continue low contact with strong boundaries. With such a large family, no contact would be easy and would create a lot of awkward situations where we would still have to see them. We have also talked to our kids, and they have both expressed that they want to have a relationship with their grandparents. While I do not expect my parents to change, I do believe they will respect our boundaries. My attitude towards them has also changed. I no longer feel like I owe them anything. We will continue a relationship with them, because it is what's best for my family, not because they deserve it. Lastly, I received a recommendation for a family therapist, and I have an appointment scheduled for next month. TLDR of previous posts. My parents had a bunch of kids and expected me and my older sister to raise them, then resented me for starting my own family. Currently, I am having health issues, and my parents refuse to help. Second story. OP's wife leaves him, then begs him to take her back. My 28-year-old wife 27F left me for 3 months and recently begged me to take her back. I said no, and everyone seems to be against me. I need some advice. Rangers. Well, let me give some background information, as the situation will be hard to understand without it. 7 years ago, I got married to the girl of my dreams, Denise, fake name. We had been dating for 2 years before that, and it was like a dream come true. That changed after our marriage. After our marriage, she constantly started feeling down and out of it. And eventually I got her to go to a doctor, who sent her to a therapist. And from there we found out she had depression to do with things from her past that she was trying to forget. I decided to be as supportive as I could be. I took care of most of the housework, despite working 40 hours a week, and told her to just get herself in order. And if she needed to talk to me, I would be there for her. That was 6.5 years ago. Before she left, she was still depressed. She basically only lays in bed and complains. She does nothing. We had no intimacy, no sex, no cuddles, no going out. My entire day was filled with work and housework. Day in and day out, I worked my arse off, came home to a mess of a house, and started cleaning up, starting dinner, and so forth. At the end of the day, I was exhausted, and all I could expect was for Denise to unload more of her trouble on me and complain about herself, me, and everything around her. I could not even hang out with my buddies to get away from it all, as she would relentlessly call me, saying she was scared and everything, so I also had no social life. Not that I had time for it anyway. But despite it all, I pushed through, hoping that sooner or later she would break out of it, and we could have a proper life together, as I loved her. And as they say, for better or worse, this was quite clearly worse, possibly the worst it would ever be. 4 months ago, she got a new therapist, and 3 months ago that therapist suggested she needed time away from me as her depression started when we married, so I may be the cause of it. The moment she told me I was crushed, I started doubting myself, blaming myself, worrying. But beneath it all, this creeping sense of having done everything for her, having sacrificed years of my life as a cash cow and a servant for her to lay in bed. And this is my thanks. Is it my fault now? But I rejected that feeling, trying to talk through it. But she decided to leave and stay with her mother, saying she needed time away from me, and that I may be the cause of her depression, and so forth. Honestly, the entire argument is a blur in my head. I spent the next month, when she moved out, calling her and her family, begging and humiliating myself just to get her back, apologizing for everything I may have done wrong. Honestly, I was close to ending it all, as I was so hopeless at that point. But that month passed, and as it passed, I couldn't help but feel relieved. I came home, and it was quiet. I could indulge in my hobbies, which I had not done in years. The place was not a mess every time I came home. I could relax. And 2 months later, I even realized I could hang out with my buddies again, grabbing a beer and enjoying life. And slowly I started to realize that I had been miserable this entire time. Slowly, that turned into more and more realizations before I realized I honestly did not love her anymore. I felt like my youth was wasting away. I could do much, much better than this. I felt like I was the caretaker of a handicapped old lady. Hell, I still looked good. And as I went out, I started once again gaining back my self-confidence. Women would flirt with me. I felt wanted even though I never did flirt back. After all these realizations, I suddenly got a call from my wife, saying she made a huge mistake, that she was sobbing her eyes out, that she was an idiot, taking the therapist's words as fact, and that she loved me. For a moment, I wanted to say, yes, please come back. But I couldn't. I just blurted it out and said to her that she had left me, and I was done with this relationship. I told her I would get divorce papers, and I told her I had wasted enough time as it was. This final action of hers was the nail in the coffin. After that, I just dropped the phone, started crying for a bit, and felt liberated. The issue now is that everyone in my family is telling me, I am making a mistake, I should take her back. I owe it to her to try and make it work. Marriage is not always fun, etc. The thing is, I never had fun in this marriage. I can't remember the last time I had fun and wasn't miserable. We are both young and fit, and we never even go out. Hell, the last time we had sex was over a year ago. All I am to her is a effing servant, as it seems, and I would rather live along than spend one more hour taking care of her. But on the other end, I doubt myself. Am I really dumping someone who is depressed? I feel horrible about it. I feel like a failure. I just need advice. Edit. Well, I stepped away from my phone for a while and returned to a ton of comments. Thank you all so much. I will try to read them all. Edit 2. While I have a hard time defending my wife right now, let me clarify something that is popping up in some comments. I know for a fact that she did not sleep around with anyone while we were separated. Update. Let me start by thanking all the people who responded. There was a lot of insight, a lot of advice, and a lot of support. And while there were certainly a fair share of people just looking for an argument, insulting me, making offensive comments, or trying to rope me into something called MGTO, luckily the vast majority of replies were great and stuff I could work with. Especially those who are in similar situations, and those who are in said situation, but are the depressed party proved to give me some insight I sometimes did not even consider. Also, I am sorry for not being able to respond to everyone. I really tried my best to respond, but there were so many comments that I honestly couldn't keep up anymore. Rest assured, I tried to read just about every single comment, so your advice likely did not go in vain, and I appreciate it. I ended up having a really good think about my entire situation, trying to weigh out whether I would be able to give her another chance to begin with, as despite my post, giving away was actually something I struggled with. I was a bit of an emotional mess after all, and honestly, I sort of lacked control over my emotions. As you might have noticed in some of my responses, sometimes I seemed nostalgic, forgiving, and nice. Other times I seemed vengeful, resentful, and hateful. I will admit right away that this is all me, and like I told some people in messages, I was and still am not in the best of places emotionally. But I have been working on getting my own emotions under control the past few days, and I can say I am in a better place than I was a week ago. But it will certainly take some more time for me to recuperate from all of this. Now off to what people were likely looking to see. What ended up happening this week that made me decide to make an update post? Well, after all that thinking, I decided that regardless of what course I would be taking, as some people suggested, it would be my decisions and mine alone, not the decisions of my parents, her parents, friends, or people on the internet. A decision I would be the one living with at the end of the day. So I decided I would inevitably end up regretting it all if I did not at the very least talk to my wife and get some closure. So that is exactly what I did. 2 days ago, I decided to invite her to our home to talk about us, our relationship, what I would be doing going forward, her depression, and so forth. Basically just to get it all on the table. Now, it would be impossible to narrate this entire conversation. And honestly, it was about some very personal stuff. So I would not want to even if I could. So I will instead try to break it down and give a summary of sorts. We ended up discussing our entire relationship. I must admit it was very awkward and confronting, as it was about a lot of stuff I had bottled up for so long, that it was very hard for me not to start yelling. I told her I was exhausted. I told her everything we had been trying obviously had not been working. I told her I felt like a doormat. And I told her she was not the person I married. I told her these 3 months had been liberating for me. I told her I was tired of it all. I told her that I felt like she wasn't doing anything to help herself. I told her she was not doing anything around the house. I told her a marriage is supposed to be a partnership, but I felt like I was basically married to myself, and that I was the only partner in this relationship. Essentially, I unloaded the stuff I had been feeling for years by now. I told her I had a hard time not regretting the day I married her at this point. And while it obviously really hurt her to hear, she told me she knew. She knew I was unhappy. She knew she had been anything but a partner. She knew she was horrible about it all. But she felt like whatever she tried, she always ended up fearing getting better, getting demotivated to do anything. And that when she left, she almost felt like she had burdened me enough, that it wasn't for her, but for me. But that she went about it the wrong way and ended up blaming the therapist as an easy way out. While it was true the therapist had guided her in some way towards this decision, the decision she made was for the right reasons. But the explanation she provided was tailored to her, not to me, which was disregarding the therapist's advice entirely. She said she felt guilty about it all, and that guilt was just making her psychological state even worse. She said she hated seeing me go to work, come home exhausted, and have to clean everything up until I just passed out. Essentially, which I might add is a massive step for her, as she never admitted this. But she started admitting a lot of stuff, and apologizing for a lot of things in our relationship. She said her time away made her realize how much I mean to her, how much she took for granted, and that she should have done better a long time ago. To which I told her, I felt like I had been enabling her essentially. While I had tried to keep her on her medication, and all of that, at the end of the day, it was always me picking up after her, which probably made it easier for her to slip back into it all. Well, after hours upon hours of talking, we ended up hugging for what seemed like over an hour before going back to talking. And she basically said she understood if I would not take her back. She understood if I did not trust her to get better. She understood that I was tired. But she asked me to give her one more chance, and she would do anything for it. I have to admit, my mind immediately wanted me to go to the obvious option, which was not taking her back, not giving her a chance. But honestly, in this discussion, she was the person I was once in love with. She seemed to take ownership of things. She seemed different somehow. But I also knew the risks coming with taking her back. And honestly, I was not about to pull another Mary. So I told her I would be willing to give it a shot. But it wouldn't be like before, not at all. I told her she would have to prove she was going to put in the effort first, before we could even begin. Firstly, I told her she had to get a part-time job. I don't care what sort of job it is, whether it is waiting tables at a clothing store or at some company. It is irrelevant as long as she made sure to go every single time she was supposed to go, looked presentable when going, and did her best at said job. Secondly, she knows I like going to the gym. As such, she would be going with me at least 3 times a week to get in shape again, get some exercise in, but most of all, be busy in a healthy way. Thirdly, she is going to help her parents around the house while she stays there. No more sitting in her room with her thoughts, groceries, dishes, vacuuming, whatever. She is going to make an effort to do it every single day. Fourthly, as some people suggested, we were going to go on a date once a week, no more escaping, not wanting to go outside, feeling self-conscious, no more excuses. Fifthly, we were going to do couple counseling. I know we tried before, but we will try again. Sixth, she is going to go to a new therapist, not lie about anything anymore, and do what the therapist tells her. Seventh, if the therapist suggests medication, she is going to take them every time she is supposed to take them, and I will keep them with me, and she will take them in front of me. No more forgetting, no more not taking them, no more complaining, and if there are issues with them, we will try different ones, but regardless, she is going to stick to it. I told her, once we are doing all that, we can go to the next stage of repairing our relationship. But until she does them and keeps them up for a good few months, there is not a single chance I will continue our relationship. And yes, I know ultimatums are taboo in relationship advice, but I don't think I have much of a choice. To my surprise, she actually agreed, and to my even bigger surprise, despite it only having been 2 days, she was actually helping her mother and father around the house yesterday, and has been looking for jobs. Her dad also said she seemed a lot more cheerful. Now I know there is a long road left, and I know there is a good chance this won't work out, and that I should not cheer too early. But honestly, I am hoping I get my wife back, and I felt I owe it to myself to at least allow her this one last chance. Call me an idiot for giving her this chance, but well, perhaps I am an idiot. That was my update. I am not sure whether I will make another. Honestly, I had not even planned on making this one. I want to thank the people who responded to my other post again for their insight and advice. And I hope all of you live happily ever after or something. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.